I feel like every cold open has to be, have you heard? Our Kickstarter Notify Me on Launch page is live.
You did say a few shows ago that you were not going to stop saying it.
Not going to stop saying it. If you're listening and you like what you're hearing, otherwise you wouldn't be listening, right? Unless you randomly found us, or like maybe you're listening for the first time because you found us after Gen Con. But I think if you're listening, you're liking what you're hearing, you're getting some value from this, please follow us on Kickstarter. Go to Kickstarter, search Under One Sky, and click Notify Me on Launch.
I'm Hunter Pence, and you're listening to the Misplay podcast. Oh, yeah.
Hello, and welcome to the Misplay, where we don't believe in Team Steggy. My name is Mark.
My name is Jason.
Team Steggy.
You won a copy of Dino Racer because of Steggy.
I overdraft Steggies now when I play Dino Racer because of the bias of winning the free game.
At Gen Con, Mark, it was after we had recorded the live episode. One of the really cool events at Gen Con was Underdog Games. They were running a Dino Racer event like every hour.
Dino Racer is designed by Marceline Lyman. They were running a great event where you could watch a game of Dino Racer be played, and then you got to draft a dino to see who would win, and the winning dinos in the event promotion got free copies of the game.
Not only that, you got your copy of the game signed.
True story.
You were holding a Steggy card. Now, that's not even the reason I put this as the misplay, Mark. I have lost to my 4.5-year-old many times over the last week. He's incredible at Dino Racer. I actually love how accessible it is for him. Now, he's not adding up his points at the end of the game. I'm doing that, so I could cheat and say that I won. But I just love how accessible it is for a 4.5-year-old to play that, because we play Hot Streak. I bought Hot Streak. I really enjoy it. It's another like funny racing game in that genre, but he doesn't really understand the betting in that game or how to score points, and he's kind of picking randomly. Well, in Dino Racer, he has some control over. He sees who's winning and who's not, and he makes his choices. And I did not think, the first game, he crushed me. I'm playing the win, but since Team Steggy won his first game, he believes in Team Steggy, and he almost drafts Team Steggy all the time. And I don't think I've beaten him.
Maybe he just solved the game and broke it.
Maybe. You know, I'm always trying to get tri-top there.
It still feels like we're writing a little bit of the post-Gen Con debrief. We're still telling stories that are following our trip to Gen Con. We're still going through feedback. We've already started making some adjustments to things like the rulebook and new art. The changes are coming, all according to plan.
Yeah, I mean, that's all according to plan. I'm excited about what this new yellow star is going to look like.
I hope that's something that we're going to get into today, but we have a lot to talk about still in combing through the feedback and use that to kind of outline the next few steps of the roadmap and where we want to be going towards the Kickstarter launch.
But before we do that, this week's episode is brought to you by Best with One Games. What if you could discover a brand new solo game every single month? That's the idea behind Solo Game of the Month from Best with One Games. Every month, they crowdfund a small box solo game on GameFound, giving you something new to look forward to and play, even if you don't have the friends to play it with. The next game is Hero Bound. Head over to GameFound and check out Solo Game of the Month from Best with One Games. Head over to GameFound and search Solo Game of the Month to find all of the Best with One Games projects. The Thing.
Last episode, we talked about the different kinds of events that we ran, the different opportunities that we tried to create, and ways that we were trying to promote the game. We talked a lot about stories and exciting things that we got to see, play, experience while we were at Gen Con. Today, I think we need a more technical approach or a detailed approach to thinking about the feedback that we got at Gen Con, because the work part of it was to vet our rulebook. We were very fortunate that all of our players were willing to do the blind playtests in the First Exposure Playtest Hall. We were working on our quality of life improvements. And then we were just looking for other extra feedback to make those like final revisions and tweaks to what we want for the game, the box, the art, the everything else.
And we're back. We've got a show doc again.
So maybe let's start then with going through our events. Let's go through our First Exposure Playtest Hall. I think that's where we got the most concrete, specific feedback. So I think it makes sense to start there. Set the scene for us. What were we really trying to get from our feedback?
I have my notebook here in front of me. And at times, I don't know, the mic might hear me turning pages and flipping. The number one thing that we wanted to understand from the First Exposure Playtest Hall was, could players complete a blind playtest? Could they, without us, read the rulebook and play the game correctly? They did, right? I think in the last episode, we said 7 of 8 with no interference from us played the game correctly and did so in less than 25 minutes, reading the rules and playing the game.
Correct. Yes.
I'll start with what I expected to hear more of, especially in the First Exposure Playtest Hall. Why there, I'm not sure, but because we had more time with them in our debriefs. I expected to hear more issues with color, and we did not run into that because prior to Gen Con, I was at the Bay Area Protospiel in Redwood City. I was playing in Sports Basement, and almost everybody there talked about the colors. I think what I can chalk a lot of that up to now, and I did hint at that, I did say it's possible it's because of my home printer. I think a lot of that was my home printer because at Gen Con, we played with the pre-production copies from What's, and those were beautiful, as people have pointed out and as we have pointed out, and as we were happy to go back and tell Zita, who has now seen a copy of the game as well. She was ecstatic to see it. Because I went into it going, we have to change colors. This is not working. But with the printed copies, they looked good. And can you think of anybody all weekend who pointed out, they said, maybe I can't tell that the wild tile is all 3 colors, or it's not clear to me the difference between orange and this card, and do I only win with orange on this card because it matches the orange tile?
No, nobody.
Right. So I was expecting to get a lot of that, and we didn't. So I feel good about that, and I don't feel we have to change colors of the star charts and the constellation cards. I think they're okay. I think they're great. I don't just think they're okay. I think they're great. I'm happy that with professional printing, there's no visual issues. So weird place to start, I think, because it didn't come up at all during Gen Con. But I went in fully expecting to have these color conversations, and it just never came up.
Good news for good pre-production copies.
One of the differences is also the blind playtest. They got to read the rulebook. Reading the rulebook helps you familiarize yourself with the game as you go. And maybe the act of doing that also helped. I don't know.
The rulebook was, that was the reason why we did the blind playtest, right? We wanted to see how players responded directly to the rulebook. And largely, it seemed supportive of making sure that players were setting up correctly. The orientation issues that we've spent a lot of time thinking about only presented themselves in a small number of cases. And most of the time, between the 2 players at the test, were able to organize their orientations of their constellation to star charts correctly. So like the first blind playtests read pretty successful as the version of the rulebook that we used.
The only visual thing that stood out, Mark, is something that I know you've talked about, is the J, M, and K on the star chart cards.
Yeah, there was a small subset of players that didn't see them on the constellation cards or star chart. And so in my notes, I had, maybe we want to look at adjusting the language in the rule book to identify by color rather than the really nice, subtle constellations that were there to mark what version of the star chart and constellations you're playing with.
Zita had put on the star charts a little constellation J, M, and Z on the 3 different star chart cards for Jason, Mark, and Zita, which I thought was a really subtle, it's almost like an Easter egg. It's just so small and subtle. But the other way to fix it, I think, is just make it bigger And Zeta has talked about this in the rule book, making it clearer and marking it in some way. And then maybe you don't have to identify it by color and you can call it the J, M, and Z, which is nice. Because again, if you say orange one, I'm colorblind, which is the orange one.
I think both solutions are viable. There's a world where you could have the rulebook designate both. I think that was one of the more noticeable features that we're going to, as we go back and consider the next version of the rulebook, consider if we're making any graphic design or art changes. I think that's one area where we want to make sure that we're paying a little bit of extra attention to.
Let's talk about what we were doing while they were playing the game and reading the rules. We were observing. We didn't speak hardly for the first, 25 minutes essentially of each table. After introductions, we were taking notes. We were watching them play. What stood out to you in the First Exposure Playtest Hall?
I mean, the first thing that kind of stood out to me that I don't know how much is an issue or not, but the thing that I wrote down at the beginning of multiple First Exposure playtests when players were doing the blind playtest is they'd go through and they'd inventory the components, which I think is a good practice. But part of that was like dumping out the bag of tiles, and then they go and read the rule book, and then they had to go and put them back in the bag. So in my head, when we were talking about quality of life things, like, is there a bag? Is there no bag? I was like, oh, like that's in my head a little bit of a data point for no bag, just because it speeds up the access to the first playthrough, but it's not a hill I'm going to die on.
I think it's natural with almost any game that when you start playing, you just kind of dump everything out and see what you got to make sure you have the right amount of things. One of the things that we have to do is they need the wild tile. You have to start with that in the middle. So you do have to go find that. And we got good feedback even before Gen Con that tile should be double-sided. Maybe okay, cost-wise, not the double side every tile because it's just going to cost more, but the wild tile should be double-sided to make it easier to find when you dump out the bag. The thing that stood out to me watching people play, Mark, is when you and I play the game, we're heads down, we don't really talk to each other. I was actually surprised at the number of people playing in the First Exposure Playtest Hall. Now, I do think there's a reason for that, but a number of them, they had a lot of banter going on with the people they were playing against. Not everybody. Some people were heads down. I actually found more people in events later on were heads down and playing and not talking. But I was really happy with the number of people that were kind of playfully playing with the people across from them. Because, that's always been a sticking point for me was, I didn't set out to design a game where we just sat across from each other and quietly contemplated life, the universe, and everything.
Contemplating life, the universe, and everything is kind of the theme of the game. You're looking at stars.
I know.
But I hear what you're saying we're a far cry from Animal Kingdom.
No, it's so close. That was part of my pitch several times when I was explaining to people about our podcast and our story. And,
I thought you were legit just trolling me to go for the lulz. Another thing that quickly made itself apparent was the standee issue.
Okay.
You're
not wrong.
We're talking about quality of life
We
things.
should start there. It's a big one.
The standees were too small.
The standees were too small. Not only that, they're probably just a little too thick and not heavy enough, right? So small in weight are connected. At the First Exposure Playtest Hall, we did a couple of games where we asked people to just ignore the standee, put the card down. I still think most people are team standee. I think 52% of people like the standee. I think it's just a little over half are like, yeah, I like the standee. I want the standee. But we have to make it longer. Costs are going up. It's not significant, but it's like, it has to be double the length. It has to be longer. One of the great things about being in the First Exposure Playtest Hall is we got to meet our representatives that we've been working with at What's. So Helen was there and Wally was there, and we were able to talk to them about the things that were coming up, things that we had noticed, especially with the standee. And, we brought it over there. We put the card in it. We showed them, and we talked about solutions.
Yeah, it was cool to put faces to the company, I guess. And I really appreciated this. This has nothing to do with like game quality of life or anything, but I did really appreciate the lead rep, Wally, went out of his way to be like, I'm not trying to upsell you. It's your first game. Keep things simple, make things look nice, build your following. He wasn't trying to like yes everything to us and be like, oh yeah, and then the cost goes up and the cost goes up. That kind of really practical eye of trying to keep us simple and in a place where our focus is able to be on building an audience, building the marketing campaign, getting ready, and keeping the physical design of the game simple. It made me feel good that we had chosen them to work with.
I found one of my quotes in my notes, Mark. 0 out of 10 on standees.
Wait, you just said 52% of people want to play with standees.
Yeah, this was somebody in the 48%.
Oh, okay. The other component we were really grappling with was the bag.
Go on.
Well, our pre-production bag was too small.
Correct. Actually, we knew that ahead of time because I saw the video of the pre-production copies that were going to come, and I had said, the bag is too small. You got to send it to me anyway because we have to have it. But we have a good sense of what size it needs to be now. Actually, we went and looked at bags from the company who makes Cascadia. They had a game called Calico, and they had another one, Kittens or Puppies or Froggies.
Oh, yeah.
More cute animals. And they had a bag that was perfect in size, I think. Texture is still something we're talking about, but the bag had to be bigger. I did bring an extra bag, so we were able to at least have half the players play with a bag that was approximately the right size. But we also did a couple of tests after the blind playtest in the First Exposure Playtest Hall where people played without the bag. We said, pretend there isn't a bag. Just flip all the tiles over on the table, flip over 3. That's your shared pool. And then every turn, instead of reaching into the bag and pulling it out, which sometimes felt like a laborious thing, they could just flip it over on the table. It's pretty mixed. Nobody said, this is significantly better. I'm not sure anyone said this is even better. It was like, it's kind of the same.
I think there was more of a subset of players that we played with that actively liked going to the bag, as opposed to worrying about number of times or like the 2 seconds of loss between turns. So I suppose we're still team bag and team standee. But then we also you were talking about texture. We also had discussions with players about the envelope style bag that we brought versus there's a different way to stitch it where the bag could stand up to make access to the tiles easier for all the players.
I'm honestly just not sure if we can do it or not. One of the first things that I did when I had some free time is I walked into the exhibit hall, and one of the first things I came across was this company that makes I'll just call them artisan bags. They were just like handmade, beautiful bags. Just so beautiful. And they stood up and you could just, you didn't have to pass it. It would just stand up and you could just put your hand in. If we're ever doing stretch goals, then it would be some really artisan bag. But we're not doing stretch goals. Our only stretch goal is getting more people to follow us on Kickstarter.
Let's go, everybody. Notify me on launch. I think there were 2 other pieces of feedback to bring to consideration. One was there were players that wanted their player aid of having a card or something that sits out with them and shows the moves for the tiles. And we did have one set of playtesters recommend having a QR code that links to the how to play video instead of as a supplement to the rulebook.
I'll start with that one first. That's a good idea, I think. I think we're going to have to end up creating that, though. I think that's something that we're going to have to do in the next few weeks so that we can post that to Kickstarter. I think that has to be done, and I think it's a good idea. A lot of boxes, I'm noticing that when you open the box, it's on the opposite side of the cover. There's a QR code that says, and people are putting in their rule books. Rule books are hard. Watch this video. It makes it easier. So I think that is a great idea. We're going to do that. How great the video is going to be, I don't know, because I'm filming it and I'd like to have people in it who are not me, but we'll see. The other piece about the player aid, I want to push back on. And I asked people, but I didn't want to push back too hard because it's nice of them to play our game and give us feedback, and you should say thank you and you should write it down. Initially, I was team player aid. But what I realized is once you play the game once, you don't need the references. You understand how the tiles work now. Now, I get that there's always going to be some first-time players. You want to introduce the game to somebody. So somebody comes over to the house you've never played, and you want to put down this card in front of them that shows you what the blue tile does, what the orange tile does, and what the yellow tile does. I get it, but it only takes a minute to teach it to somebody. And once they know how to do it, they don't have to reference that card again. Now, certainly there were some players playing the game who even midway through a game were like, oh, what's blue do again? And they did need a reference, whether that was from me or they had to go back and look in the rule book. And it's not that I'm trying to save 2 cents on a card, because that's all it is. I just make one more card that is the size of a constellation card that can sit out in front. But my thought is, like, you really don't, it's not going to be used 90% of the time. It's just going to be, I know how to play the game now, I'm going to put that away. Alternatively, just open the rule book. It's not a huge piece of paper. You could just open the rule book to one page that shows all 3 tiles. I rest my case.
It's not something that I feel strongly about. I think the way the rule book that we brought to Gen Con is laid out, you can actually have it open and have that be your player aid. I think that's a reasonable solution. I would wonder, it does seem to be pretty industry standard to have one. And if we're marketing ourselves in a way where we're trying to sell the game as, a quality product, do we have to adhere to that industry standard? I can think of games that don't have it, but it's a much shorter list of games that don't have one than games that do.
I'd like to see your math on that, but it is it's almost an easy win, right? Somebody who's playtested our game has said, "Oh, have you thought about doing this?" If I just do that, I think they'd be really happy. Not only to have that, but to feel like they've contributed to the project. And it's a 2-cent thing. It's adding an extra card that you can put out if you want. And if you don't want, you can put it away. We're arguing over 2 cents. We're not arguing, but I see the rationale for doing it.
Well, here's quick math for you. Devil's Dice has one. Dino Racer has them. What else did we play? Avarice has one. Space Base have one?
Does Dino Racer have one?
Mm-hmm. It has it has player aid for setting up the race line. It has the start and end point. It has a thing that says how many checkpoints you have. It has the tiebreaker order for how the dinosaurs are oriented. It's actually very thorough.
I'm probably not playing by the rules. That's why Team Steggy keeps winning. I do whatever I want.
Eschaton had player aid.
Eschaton needs it. There's a lot going on. I won't understand how to play that game properly until the 5th playthrough. That's what I said to you.
The only game that I can think of off the top of my head that doesn't have player aid is Hive.
I just can't argue with that because you have just said every game you've ever played that you can think of has a player aid.
Fox in the Forest has a player aid.
Go on.
I'm just saying industry standard would recommend having one.
Mark is team player aid.
Sure.
Okay.
I was thinking it benefits the players that play your game once, put it away for a while, take it back out, and need a refresher.
Okay. Let's talk about the events. We said on the last episode that not only were we in the First Exposure Playtest Hall, but we got to actually create events in the Gen Con portal. People signed up to play. How are those playtests different?
I mean, the big difference is we taught the game instead of asking players to do blind playtests since they paid to play the event.
And we only had an hour with them. So it wasn't a 2-hour event like the First Exposure Playtest Hall is.
So it was more focused on the teach. It definitely, walking around the rest of the event hall, it very much felt like events are things you run when you're selling your game. You demo it and then you make your sales pitch. And there were people that said if you had copies for sale, I would have bought it today.
Yeah, that was cool to hear that if we had copies available, people were like, yeah, I'll buy a copy. But you're right. Looking around at the other events, I'm glad we didn't bring what we had last year. Last year, we brought 3D printed prototypes. I'd be hard pressed to find many 3D printed prototypes in the event hall where they do the demos. They look like completed games. Good decision last year. I didn't even know about it, I think.
But I mean, we were still asking for similar feedback after. Since we weren't making the sales pitch, we were getting debrief information from players, which was still pretty consistent with the things that we experienced in the First Exposure Playtest Hall, minus comments about the rulebook. It was interesting to hear the reasons for players choosing our events.
Yeah, that was the first question we asked everybody. We said, how did you find us? I was so shocked to hear that people they just browse the catalog, which is not something I do. I look for specific games. Other people browse the catalog for things that interest them. And whatever we had written in the Gen Con portal, the description of the game, caught people's attention. Not only that, multiple people told us, I like the name, Under One Sky. I came because of that. That was cool to hear.
I think the other big factor was having the game designated specifically for 2 players, because a lot of people commented on, a 2 to 4 player game is for 2 players, but doesn't play like it's for 2 players. Can you imagine playing Settlers of Catan with just 2 people?
Yeah, no, I have.
Is it fun?
Did I win?
No idea.
Well, If I won, it was fun.
The point being, games like Settlers of Catan that are listed for two to more than 2 players played pretty differently when it's just heads up. And so being designed to be just 2 players, I think was also something that drew people looking for events to play.
Yeah, most people came with somebody that they knew. They signed up together, or they signed up as a whole family, like the first group who sat with us. Wonderful. Again, the people we met in the First Exposure Playtest Hall and in the events, everybody was just so wonderful. There was no negative experiences. It was just purely like, nice to meet you. Tell us about you. Where are you from? Everybody played the game, pretended they had fun.
And even played it more than once most of the time.
One of my favorite things to see is when people finished playing the game, the rule book advised people to play with the orange card. When we set it up, you saw that I always set up the game with orange for new players. So in the event hall, we always set it up with the orange star chart. And I always model the T as the winning pattern and how to form it. It was great when people were like, let's play with that one. Let's play with that one. Let's play with the blue one. Let's play with the purple one. Those are harder patterns. Something I had fun with, Mark, was capturing people's quotes. I was always writing them down in my book. I posted a lot of them on Blue Sky. I'm just going to go over some of them. So I posted these, and not in any particular order other than, I think these were kind of just the order in which I had uploaded them. The first one was, I don't like yellow. Yellow has that feeling that it's not as powerful. And we know that. That's not a balance issue. Is the way we design the game. It has this other utility to rotate the board to allow the game to be played in different perspectives. So it's important. But yeah, people are like, I don't like yellow.
I like the player that was in that same vein, something along the lines of, I want to throw the yellow tiles out the window.
Yeah. Nice game for just us. I would be backer number 1. One of my subtly favorite ones, adequately complex. There was another one that I liked. I like when people start to understand the game. And even in a first playthrough, somebody had said, I'm placing an ambiguous tile so I don't give away what I want. It's like, yes, that person plays games. They're already thinking next level of, what information they should give away or not give away to the person they're playing against. I think the funniest one was the family in our first event, and the dad had said, this game was made for children and not adults, after he lost to his daughter a couple of times. Can we play again is always my favorite quote. Wrote that down. And then we had one playtester that gave us some really great quotes. I'm a vibe player. I'm just here to look at the stars, man.
Nailed it.
Stand by your decision to ruin the world. This is like their response to the other person rotating the board, I think, when they had a win set up. PJ from Meeple to Meeple had said, I love these type of games, but I'm so bad at them.
I don't think he won a game against his wife.
No, but he had fun.
Hey, if you're enjoying your losses, something is happening something good is happening. You're doing something right as the game designer. All of that said, First Exposure Playtest Hall events, we were thrilled, humbled, enjoyed watching players play our game and get a chance to share it with them. With the feedback that we've gotten, now I think we have to start asking the real questions of what's next. Are we on track for September 14th launch? That was one of the things that we outlined for ourselves when we were going into Gen Con, is we wanted to come away with enough information to make that decision. You're making faces.
Yeah, because if we're not successful, in a world where we're not successful, the story still stands. What we've done over the last 2.5 years, there's merit and value to our work, even if we're not successful. And by the metric of having our crowdfund meet its goal, which is 250 copies. So yeah, I give the face while you're talking because I want it to be successful, right? People have given me the advice to wait. Now, these are random people. We're going to have a guest on next week's show that I'm really excited about. And I'm really looking forward to hearing their perspective, because they are somebody that is just really well respected in the board game community and has a lot of experience designing games and helping other designers. People have told me that because of what we're doing and where we're not advertising and not getting ourselves out there, that we are hamstringing ourselves. I understand it, and I've told you I'd rather fail than spend $1 on a Facebook ad. So with that said that way, are we on target for September 14th? We're going for it. We've already said, you and I have talked, we're going for it. Our goal was at Gen Con to get 100 followers. We didn't get there. We left with 77, I think. Right now we're at 96. By the time this episode airs, we'll be at 100. I'm pretty sure. So one little milestone checked. We wanted to get into the hundreds. We still need more. We need to get out there. We've talked about some things that we can do. We can possibly do some events here at local board game events or at local board game stores. We've talked about streaming. We need to just continue to get our name out there in whatever way that we can, as organically as possible.
We march on.
We march on. September 14th, we are going to be on Kickstarter. And I've said it for 2 weeks. Some people do a whole month. I think I said why. Most of your backers come on day one. The other big bunch come on the end of it, and the middle is very kind of slow growth.
You mentioned it in kind of the buildup of the things that we're tweaking. We're in our kind of hopefully last couple of passes of the rulebook. You know, we're starting to look at revising language. I think the language around how to define surrounding tiles is kind of the last like really thorny set of language that we're working on. I think the language is passable, but we're always looking at other language or variants to improve on how to make the definition clearer for players.
Head over to Blue Sky or check out our Discord. I will have posted images of some of the rulebook pages that Zeta has developed. It's going to be a beautiful rulebook. I honestly think it could be a rulebook people reference and go, wow, that's just beautifully structured. The images in that are so well done. We're moving away from real pictures or like computer pictures of the game, and Zeta is beautifully hand drawing the setup of the game, what it looks like for tile movement, and putting some art on the pages. Beautiful rulebook. Buy it for the rulebook.
I'm gonna buy a copy just so I can like tear out the pages and just like post them up on my wall.
There you go.
So you can put me down for 2 copies now.
Excellent. I have you down for about 25 right now, so make sure that happens. The other major thing I think we're working on, I think the biggest thing that we're working on right now is redesigning what yellow looks like. We did get feedback at Gen Con that the yellow tile, it's so funny because there was a person who took out their phone and drew what they thought the yellow tile should look like. And if you can imagine our yellow tile right now, turn it sideways and put 2 of them and stack them on top of each other, they kind of drew, it kind of looks like the Cancer zodiac sign. And I looked at it and I went, okay, like that's something. We'll take that feedback. I'll pass it on. I gave it to Zeta. And Scott was doing some research and started looking up stars and ended up finding this term for binary stars. And do you know what binary stars look like up close?
The line drawing for the zodiac sign for Cancer.
Yes. So there ended up being a really thematic way to take that person's feedback and maybe develop the tile around that. And Zeta's actually, that is in Blue Sky. That is on Discord right now. You can look at Zeta's first run at what the new tile could look like. I've already signed off on it. Box it, ship it.
Beyond wanting the game to be successful on Kickstarter for being able to say, oh yeah, like I designed this game and now it's published and now you can buy copies of it. I want the Kickstarter to be successful because I want to have the published copy with Zeta's name on the box. The work that she's done has just been so impressive in the way that she breathed life into the game. Like we know the game doesn't necessarily carry the heaviest dripping theme that you could possibly have in a board game. But the art that she's created is the anchor that breathes that life into the theme of the game.
And I'm not sure she knows that. And I'm glad you said that, because she had sent me a text recently. It was like, thank you for this opportunity. It means so much. And I'm like, no. Thank you.
We'll make sure to send the audio clip. Funny story. When we met, I was like, oh, have you heard the episode yet? Because we talked a lot about the art. And she's like, no, not yet.
The other thing. The other thing is, as part of our marketing campaign, we are setting up a bunch of local events. I think we're going to sell most of our copies here in San Francisco, which is good because people can save on shipping. They won't have to add shipping if they don't want to. We'll have a local pickup option for people. But we're really lucky. We're surrounded by a few game stores who have been really supportive to us already. Game Parlor, who let us record a live episode. Game Parlor is somebody that we've reached out to and said, hey, we'd love to have a live event here when our Kickstarter is live. Can we do an event in the store? Gamescape is another company that we've reached out to. They've been really supportive of local game designers within the Golden Gate Game Maker community. You've mentioned before, we went there for Leonie's event when her Kickstarter was live. We're also going to reach out to Victory Point Cafe, where you have taken the game a number of times to do playtests in the early stages. There's also Dog Patch Games, where we've gone for Golden Gate Game Maker events. We could be down in the Guild House in San Jose. We could have an event at Sports Basement. We just have to set up the calendar. We have to just figure out what we're able to do time-wise and then pencil in these events. And I think if we can get out there as much as we can in those 2 weeks, all the better for our campaign. I would love to start it, if we can, at Game Parlor. So I'm waiting to hear back on whether or not we can do it there on the 14th. We are going to be at the next Game Market West in San Jose at the very end of our Kickstarter. So in the last couple of days, we'll be at Game Market West. And we're not selling the physical copies, but we'll have the link to the Kickstarter that says, hey, do you like this game? It's right here. Check it out. You can buy it right now on Kickstarter, and it will be to you relatively soon, because right now the game is, let's say 85% done. We're making some small changes. We're working on the rule book. When the Kickstarter ends at the end of September, we'll basically be ready to tell manufacturer go. And then it's 2 to 3 months based on whatever their schedule is. And then it's a couple of months to get it shipped. I'm hopeful that we could, at the latest, say April. I'm kind of looking at April as the latest. There's always unforeseen things that could happen, but that's the plan.
The Misplay podcast is brought to you by Howley Boy Games. Consider donating at buymeacoffee.com/themisplay. We express our humble gratitude and recognize any level of support here on our list of sponsors. If you'd like to become a featured sponsor of the show, find our form at themisplay.com/sponsors.
Just say a new other thing. Just give a different one. And then we don't have to use what I said.
The other thing.
Very good. The thing.
Now I'm making faces.
You should have let me hire somebody on Fiverr to do the bumpers.